Hello everyone, welcome back. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. My name is Ryan. My last relationship made me realize that when someone calls you worthless in front of their friends over a denied request for more money, they're showing you exactly how they viewed you all along, as an ATM rather than a partner, and walking away from that revelation is the only self-respecting response. If you enjoy stories like this, take a moment to tap the like button and leave a comment on where you're watching from. Let's know ourselves. Now back to the story. I'd been with Nicole for a year and a half when she called me worthless in front of 5 of her friends because I questioned a wedding expense. For the past 18 months, I thought we were building toward a genuine partnership, but it was actually just me funding someone's lifestyle while she learned precisely how much she could take before I'd finally say no. We met on a dating app because working for an oil and gas company stationed offshore on drilling platforms for weeks at a time didn't leave me time to meet women in person. The work was demanding and isolating, but it paid exceptionally well. More money than I knew what to do with as a single guy living modestly. When Nicole's profile appeared on my screen while I was swiping, I was immediately struck by how beautiful she was. I won't lie, I believe she was model-level attractive. And I knew right out of the bag that she was the kind of woman who gets constant attention. Some of the professional photos she took looked almost too good to be real. I swiped right, not really expecting a match, because women who looked like Nicole didn't typically match with guys like me, even though I considered myself decent looking. But we matched. And when we started messaging, she seemed surprisingly down-to-earth, charming, witty, and warm in ways that contradicted the intimidating beauty of her photos. We set up a date for my next time onshore. Met at a nice restaurant in Houston. She looked even better in person, which seemed impossible but was true. The date went smoothly as we had an easy conversation that showed how good our chemistry is. She laughed at my jokes, seemed genuinely interested in my work, and asked thoughtful questions about my life. At the end of the evening, she thanked me for dinner, which I'd paid for without question, and said she'd love to see me again. We had several more dates over the following weeks during my shore leave. Each one felt perfect. Like I'd found someone special who happened also to be stunningly beautiful. My work schedule meant I was offshore for 3 weeks at a time, then onshore for 2 weeks. The distance and separation could have been a relationship killer, but we made it work through constant communication while I was away. I overcompensated for my absence by making our time together memorable when I was home. I would take Nicole to expensive restaurants, friendly hotels, for weekend getaways, shows, and events she mentioned wanting to see. I bought her thoughtful gifts and jewelry when she admired something, designer handbags she'd post on social media. I even upgraded her phone when it was getting old. Nothing she explicitly asked for, but things I noticed she wanted and I could easily afford to give her. She always seemed appreciative while thanking me enthusiastically. She would sometimes post photos of the gifts online with captions about how lucky she was. Would be affectionate and attentive when I was home. I didn't realize I was somehow setting a dangerous precedent, teaching her that I'd provide whatever she wanted without her needing to contribute much beyond her presence and affection. She grew accustomed to being prioritized, to having her desires met immediately, and to having any want or need she expressed met. I grew accustomed to giving in, making her happy through financial generosity, and measuring my value as a partner by how much I could provide materially. The relationship progressed without major conflicts. We never had serious fights. She always seemed happy when I was around. The weeks apart were difficult, but the reunions felt worth the separation. After about a year and 3 months together, I started thinking about marriage. Nicole seemed like someone I could build a future with. We were compatible, and she understood my demanding work schedule and seemed to value what we had together. Around the 18-month mark, I proposed after I bought an engagement ring that cost more than most people's cars. I planned an elaborate proposal at her favorite restaurant with rose petals and a photographer to capture the moment. Nicole said yes immediately. Called her friends right there at the table to share the news, and posted photos of the ring online within minutes. Everyone congratulated us, called us a beautiful couple, and said they were excited for our wedding. We agreed to marry relatively quickly. discussed a timeline, and settled on 3 months. I had significant savings and could afford whatever wedding she wanted. She was eager to start planning. We saw no reason to wait years for something we both wanted now. Because of my work schedule, I'd be offshore for most of the engagement period. We agreed Nicole would handle most of the wedding arrangements. She'd plan everything, make decisions about vendors and venues, and coordinate all the details. I trusted her judgment completely. I figured she'd plan something beautiful but reasonable. That she understood my financial situation was good, but not unlimited. That she'd be thoughtful about spending money that was ultimately coming from my earnings. I gave her access to my credit cards for wedding expenses, told her to get what she needed, and expected periodic updates, but didn't micromanage. About a month before the wedding date, I took an extended leave from work. Wanted to be fully present for the final preparations and the wedding itself. Had been offshore during most of the planning and felt I should be involved now. When I started reviewing what Nicole had arranged, I immediately noticed concerning patterns. Everything was excessive, over the top, and unnecessarily expensive. The venue was one of the most exclusive in Houston. She could have found something equally beautiful for a fraction of the cost. The catering package included premium upgrades we didn't need. Gold-plated flatware and champagne that cost hundreds per bottle. The floral arrangements were elaborate productions that seemed designed for a magazine photo shoot rather than a wedding. She got a designer dress with a price tag that made me physically ill when I saw the receipt. She upgraded everything at every opportunity. The wedding wasn't being planned as a celebration of our union. It was being designed as an opulent show, a spectacle to impress her social media followers and friends. I didn't confront Nicole about it immediately. We were less than a month from a wedding, so I didn't want to start fights during what should be a happy time. I tried to maintain peace and harmony, but I began involving myself in the remaining arrangements. I reviewed vendor contracts, asked questions about choices that seemed unnecessarily expensive, and tried to redirect toward more reasonable options where possible. Nicole seemed annoyed by my sudden involvement. She would say everything was already decided, that I was micromanaging after being absent during most of the planning. I backed off somewhat, but remained more vigilant, watching the spending and trying to prevent further unnecessary expenses. 2 weeks before the wedding, I went to Nicole's apartment the morning after her bachelorette party. She'd mentioned her friends would probably stay over, so I wasn't surprised to find 5 of them still there when I arrived around 10 in the morning. Let myself in with the key she'd given me months earlier. The apartment was messy from the previous night's celebration. Her friends were scattered around the living room, drinking coffee and scrolling through their phones. Nicole was in good spirits, still riding the high from her bachelorette party. She hugged me when I walked in, seemed genuinely happy to see me. Then, she immediately launched into talking about a new upgrade she wanted for the wedding. Some changes to the reception setup that would make everything more Instagram-worthy. She didn't pull me aside to discuss it privately. She just started talking about it loudly in front of all her friends, describing the upgrade enthusiastically, making it clear she expected me to agree to whatever additional cost was involved. I asked calmly what had happened to the arrangement we'd already agreed on together, the setup we discussed and confirmed weeks ago. Nicole said nothing had happened to it. She just wanted this upgrade because it seemed better, and she wants the wedding to be perfect. When she saw I wasn't immediately agreeing, because I was actually questioning this expense rather than just nodding along, she became visibly annoyed. This was unusual to her. I'd always said yes before. I had always approved of whatever she wanted without pushing back on her requests or decisions. A brief, tense silence filled the room. Her friends were watching the interaction, sensing conflict, but not sure how it would resolve. Nicole turned fully toward me. Expression shifted from annoyed to contemptuous. Then she told me she should have known I was worthless to her, that it was just a few $1,000 upgrade, that I was acting like she was asking for $1 million. The words came at me hard. Her friends looked uncomfortable as they watched this drama unfold. A few exchanged glances, but nobody said anything. They just sat there watching me process being publicly humiliated by the woman I was supposed to marry in 2 weeks. Even as my chest tightened, I forced myself to remain calm on the outside. I'd never heard Nicole talk to me like that, and had never seen this level of contempt. This casual cruelty was delivered so easily. I realized in that moment how she actually saw me. Not as a partner, not as someone she loved and respected, but as a resource, and worthless beyond my ability to fund her desires. I didn't argue or try to defend myself. I didn't try to explain why I was questioning the expense. I just grabbed my jacket from where I'd set it down when I arrived, then put on calmly, walked toward the door. Nicole called after me, asked where I was going, sounded annoyed rather than concerned. I didn't respond, just left. As I got in my truck and started the drive back to my place, it felt impossibly long, even though it was only 20 minutes. My mind kept replaying what had just happened, with her words echoing. I kept asking myself if she'd really said that, whether I'd misheard or misunderstood. But I knew I hadn't. The words had been clear. The contempt was unmistakable. I started questioning everything. Whether this was who she'd been all along. Whether she'd always seen me this way, as an ATM with emotions she needed to manage. Whether our entire relationship had been transactional on her end while being genuine on mine. I got home and waited, expecting Nicole to call or text and apologize for what she'd said in front of her friends. I waited for her to recognize she'd crossed a line, but as hours passed, there was no communication or acknowledgement of what had happened. By evening, I knew if she couldn't apologize after humiliating me publicly, if her pride mattered more than my dignity, if she could call me worthless and not immediately try to make it right, then this marriage had no foundation. It was built on my giving and her taking, on my acceptance of whatever treatment she deemed appropriate. And I was done accepting it. I decided to cancel the wedding because I realized I couldn't marry someone who viewed me with such contempt and called me worthless for finally setting one boundary after 18 months of unlimited generosity. Around 8 in the evening, I posted a brief statement on social media. Said that after careful consideration, Nicole and I had decided to cancel our wedding. I thanked people for their support. I kept the post simple and didn't assign blame publicly. The response was immediate as comments and messages poured in asking what happened. There were expressions of shock and concern. People were reaching out to both of us for an explanation of what happened. At 11 that night, 3 hours after my public announcement, Nicole finally called. She was crying, said we needed to talk. I allowed her to speak. She said she hadn't meant what she'd said about me being worthless. She blamed everything on the stress from wedding planning. She threw in that her friends had been encouraging her to demand the upgrade, and she'd gotten carried away. I listened calmly, let her say everything she needed to say. Then I told her the wedding was over, that I'd made my decision and it was final. She started begging, saying we could work through this, that every couple had rough moments, that canceling our wedding over one comment was extreme. I ended the call and blocked her number. I needed space to process everything without her trying to manipulate me back into the relationship. I learned a few days later through one of Nicole's friends that they had actually told her to apologize immediately after I'd left that morning. They had told Nicole that what she said was horrible and that she needed to fix it right away. Nicole hadn't. She had let the entire day pass without reaching out, without apologizing, or without acknowledging what she'd done. She had only called after seeing my public cancellation announcement, after realizing there were actual consequences, after understanding she was losing the wedding and everything it represented. That information told me everything I needed to know. Nicole wasn't sorry for calling me worthless. She wasn't sorry for humiliating me in front of her friends or sorry for how she treated me. She was sorry she'd lost the wedding, the spectacle, the lifestyle, and the access to my income. She valued the event more than the marriage, valued her pride more than my respect, valued what I could provide more than who I actually was. The disrespect had revealed her true character. The lack of immediate remorse confirmed it. The delayed apology proved it wasn't about love or a genuine partnership. Our relationship had been built on fundamentally unhealthy dynamics from the beginning. My overcompensation for my absence had created a sense of entitlement. My constant agreement had taught her that my boundaries didn't matter. My overgiving had fostered her undercontributing. When I'd finally drawn one boundary, questioning one expense after approving dozens of excessive choices, she'd responded with contempt. That response showed me who she was. Someone who measured my value by my willingness to spend money on her. Someone who viewed any limit setting as worthless behavior deserving of public humiliation. Idedudja akatastrophig mistaka. The financial cost was significant. I lost deposits on venues and vendors. The engagement ring I gave to Nicole, I took it back. Money spent on her over the past 18 months. The emotional investment, too. But all of it was worth losing to avoid a lifetime married to someone who'd call me worthless for saying no to just one thing. Looking back now, since I walked out of Nicole's apartment that morning, I understand everything more clearly. I learned that overcompensating financially in relationships creates dangerous imbalances. Trying to make up for my work absences through generosity had taught Nicole to expect unlimited funding rather than appreciate what I provided. I learned that beauty can be a blinding factor in judgment. That Nicole's physical attractiveness had led me to overlook warning signs I would have noticed in someone less striking. That I'd been so grateful someone who looked like her wanted me. That I'd accepted treatment I shouldn't have. I learned that entitlement grows gradually. That Nicole hadn't started the relationship contemptuously. She developed that attitude over months of reinforcing that her wants would always be met without question or limit. I learned that public humiliation reveals private contempt. That Nicole's willingness to call me worthless in front of her friends showed she'd been thinking it privately for some time. That the mask had just finally slipped. Most importantly, I learned that boundaries are essential in relationships. That saying yes to everything isn't generosity, it's enabling. That genuine partnerships require both people to contribute and both people to respect limits. Some people thought I overreacted. That canceling a wedding over one comment was extreme. I should have worked through the conflict instead of ending everything immediately. But those people didn't understand what that comment represented. That wasn't salvageable. It was a fundamental character reveal that showed our entire relationship had been built on. I stayed offshore more after ending the engagement. I took longer rotations, used work as a distraction while I tried to heal. I saved aggressively, realizing I'd been spending recklessly trying to maintain a relationship with someone who'd valued my wallet more than my person. Walking away from someone who viewed me so contemptuously was the best decision I've ever made. Even though it cost me financially, it was humiliating to cancel a wedding 2 weeks out. I had to face questions and judgment from people who didn't understand. Because the alternative was marrying Nicole and spending years or decades with someone who doesn't mind disrespecting me in public, that would have destroyed me gradually. It would have eroded my self-worth until I couldn't remember that I deserved better. Walking away forced me to recognize I was worth more than I'd been accepting, taught me to value myself enough to leave situations where I wasn't valued, and I'm grateful for it even though learning it was painful. Because now I know exactly what I won't tolerate. I'd make the same choice again, without hesitation, because self-respect isn't negotiable. And no relationship is worth losing yourself to maintain. Not even one that looked perfect from the outside. Especially not one that looked perfect from the outside. Because appearances lie, and when someone shows you who they really are through their words and actions, believe them the first time. That's what I did, and I've never regretted it. Not for a single moment.